the whole thing is a way to try to coerce society to go into an ideal that doesn't exist.
Right.
And so you're saying, my ideal is holier than you.
Right.
I am better than you, therefore I get to force you to do what I want.
Welcome to episode 1 of Don't Talk to Strangers. I didn't tell you the name of the episode, or the show, but it's called Don't Talk to Strangers. And I've got a stranger right here.
That's right. Well, I'm honored to be the first one.
Yeah, dude, it's awesome to have you. What is your name?
My name is Martin.
Martin? And I hear an accent. Where are you from?
Originally from Bulgaria.
Okay.
I've been in the States for more than half my life as of this year.
Okay. And like, did you move here for work? Did you move here just because? Were you a teenager? Because I have 2 immigrant parents, and both of them fled Iran during the revolution.
Okay.
For the sake of, being able to have a little bit better of a lifestyle, I guess.
Well, it is similar. I came because my country was very damaged by the communist rule, and the 90s were just a disaster. So a lot of people left, more like a quarter of my country. So I came to look for a better future too.
Okay, and that's interesting. Bringing up communist rule is interesting in today's day and age. That's a very interesting topic.
Hot topic, yes.
Yeah. So, how are you generally feeling about what's going on right now in the U.S.?
Currently,
Yeah.
I think it's a mortal threat to the USA.
Okay. I'm not going to say I disagree with you because, like I said, my parents come from Iran, so I value things like my freedom of speech and freedom to choice a lot. And I feel like that's something that's subtly being threatened on a day-to-day basis the way we're going.
I wouldn't say it's subtle.
Really?
It's more like a witch hunt level at this point, right?
Yeah. Do you remember like the time when it kind of triggered for you that was going on?
Here in the States?
Yeah.
Sometime around 2007-8 maybe.
Interesting, which is way sooner than I would have anticipated.
I think people where I'm from are more sensitive to it because we've seen that path.
Right.
And you see the signs for a while. First they appear in society and in the culture, and then it becomes overt and political and tyrannical and all that.
What kind of signs were you seeing that tipped you off?
I live in Seattle, which is a very far left area.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
And there, the society was already forming this kind of a witch hunt mentality where if you think different from the group, you must be shut down. And that was happening already way back in Seattle. It was packaged with all these other ways of thinking that to make you the bad guy if you think differently, like, oh, you must think positively, you must think this way, you must all be in this and this. It's
accepting of everything and anything.
That you're fed, right? Not that you dare think on your own.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I saw things just socially going that way.
So that makes me feel like that's why you had more of an interest in coming over here to talk in the first place.
Possibly, yeah.
Like that might have been a trigger for you in the first place. That's really interesting. In Seattle and Portland, especially in these last couple of months, we've seen kind of deteriorate as far as their I don't want to say their city state, but it really is. Like the mayors in the cities have no control over anything. There doesn't seem to be any type of like uniform ideology or understanding of what's going on or why they're doing anything that they're doing. And that's pretty scary.
It's scary to be there for sure, especially.
Yeah.
It's like seeing it die in front of you, like you've seen the city, in my case, for 18 years or so.
Right.
And it had a chance to be a great city, like a global, pristine, wealthy, developed place.
Right.
While in the last just maybe 5 years, it started going down. And in the last year, it went to third world conditions.
Really?
Yeah, in the core of the city. The metropolis is still quite nice. However, in the central areas, it looks like slum could be in, I don't know, Brazil or Africa or India.
And I've heard people say the same about the Portland area that they closed off for, 115, however many days.
I don't even go to Portland anymore. I think it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and which is disappointing because there's a lot of history and a lot of cool stuff going on in Portland prior to.
Yeah.
And it seems like all of those art cities. You know what I mean? All of the really artsy, artistic base cities seem to be going that direction.
Well,
it's
a package. It's a package.
Why do you say that?
Because the art and the bohemians and the left and the entire culture goes hand in hand. So even if you look back like 100 years ago, the art people and the intelligentsia and all this stuff, they were already into the far left.
Right.
You look at Ayn Rand, for example.
Okay.
She called it out all the way back then when she said, I see it, and she wrote books about it.
Right.
And she said, it's here, it's in America. You'd think America is immune from communism. It really isn't. And
right.
now we're reaping the consequences.
And it seems like people really do seem to think that we are immune to it. The people on the far left, I don't know if it's people not knowing exactly what communism is that makes it hard for them to see, or if it's that they really think it won't ever get to that point.
It's a bit of many things, I think.
Yeah.
Partially, yes, they don't know what it is. Yeah,
realistically.
And the joke online, it wasn't real communism, right?
Right.
Because the real communism is this pie in the sky that you only achieve if you're pure and holy.
Right.
And they think we are holy. Those other ones were not.
Right.
And that's I don't know, maybe an aftermath of the Puritans here or the American exceptionalism, but they think they're special.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you think, we've talked about the far left. What do you think about the far right in the United States from what you know of it? And did you experience any of that in your home country before you came here? Was there a battle between the two before?
So my country was taken over completely before I was born by the far left. So nothing else was legal, right?
Right.
So you had to, and even church was shut down forever, like until communism went away,
right,
and stuff like that. So there was no political chance for anyone to do anything but communism.
Right.
When it failed, people started getting into rival types of ideologies, I guess.
Tribalism started growing again, right?
And there was some of that stuff came from somewhere, I guess the rest of Europe or something. So there was fighting with the far right, but at that time the far left was kind of gone.
Right.
If you look, for example, a country like Ukraine, they have 5 far-right parties in their parliament and no others.
I didn't know that.
So,
I did not know that.
Yeah, so that's how Eastern European went when they suffered something like almost a century of communism. They went all the way to the other side.
Right.
Yeah. So here in the USA, it's very complicated because it's such a big country that is made up of so many things.
And I think that's just to touch on that. That's something a lot of people fail to realize is that we have like 330 million people in this country, and that's far more than most other countries have, which complicates things.
Right.
And we have way more diversity than most other countries do.
Right. So it's the least homogeneous country ever, probably.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah, and makes you think that you need a way of unifying these people, because otherwise it erupts into some kind of conflict, which we're seeing now, right?
Right.
Now, still people don't understand how bad it can get, right?
Agreed.
Because historically, you're from Iran, you've seen how bad things can get.
100%.
Right. So people here still have the rose glasses on, where they're like, oh yeah, it's America, bad things happen to other people.
Right.
There's a lot of that.
Right. And I mean, there's also the whole idea that the whole structure was built to oppress the people that are not. You see it everywhere. The white Anglo-Saxon privilege that everyone has, and white men seem to be the enemy of the people no matter what, as far as one political side of the spectrum seems to say. So it's just it is that idea of I guess unifying the people who aren't homogeneously a part of the United States, I guess you could say.
Right.
And they're creating the idea that the United States was made for white men.
Well, one way of unifying some people is to look for a scapegoat.
And
right?
look for a common enemy.
Right. I just think that's a trick communists play. They've always done that, right? They say, oh, it's the rich, oh, it's this and that. Well, this is just a racial twist on Marxism, which always looked for whoever's doing the best to be the enemy. Right, because they have what to steal from. You can go and loot the rich, and if the whites are richer and live better, you can go loot them, because the poor and the downtrodden are the good people in communism, and the successful and the wealthy are the bad people. And so you just put a racial twist on it. That's all that is.
Right. And also interjecting the idea that anyone who's successful did so by putting down people below them, or by deceiving the people who are below them. I guess you could say hierarchically speaking, not to say character-wise people are below any other people, but that's the way they look at it. From a hierarchy standpoint of who has the most in society, those people had to have done something bad to others to get there.
I think that right there is the biggest lie of communism. Right?
Right.
So it's like this. If I went and worked really hard and built a house with my 2 hands,
right,
and I have now a house, does that make me a villain?
No, right. Right. You would hope that's common sense, but
Right.
for whatever reason, it's not.
Right. So if someone else sits there for their whole life and roll in the trash and do nothing, they're the good guy.
Right.
And they deserve the house now.
Right. Right.
You know?
And I mean, I'm a big proponent of like personal responsibility. I don't think anyone gets anywhere by not taking responsibility for their life, for what they, for what they want, for one. But it's also like, I understand fully, people aren't dealt the same hands. Like no one is dealt the same hands in life.
That is true.
So it's like there seems to be like this overarching power of people wanting to make sure that everyone can have the same things no matter where they start.
Yeah, see, that too is, I think, a fundamental misunderstanding of nature.
Right.
In nature, there's no such thing as equality. And if you try to force it, which is what communism sets to accomplish,
right,
you break things.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yeah, and so, yes, there are poor people. Yes, there are rich people. Yes, it's unfair and so on. But there's no real fairness in nature either, right?
Agreed.
It's like a bird lives under a crocodile or over it, and then the nest is over there, right?
Right.
And the young jumps over right in the mouth of a crocodile. Is that fair?
No, not at all. Right.
Is that fair? Is there fairness in nature? No. So the whole thing is a way to try to coerce society to go into an ideal that doesn't exist.
Right.
And so you're saying, my ideal is holier than you.
Right.
I am better than you, therefore I get to force you to do what I want.
Right.
That's the communist thinking.
Because I'm more virtuous than you,
Exactly,
my idea is what's best here.
But it
right.
doesn't exist.
But it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So, okay, then with all of that said, what is the best way for society to exist?
I think you have to go by nature, and you also have to improve on nature, right?
Okay.
Which I think the communists are, in a way too radical in this sense, right? So you look back, you have this whole tradition of the Western thinking, which communism is a very far radical take on, right?
Right.
When there was the church and there was the aristocracy, you had a lot of poor and just very few rich, and no other thinking was allowed. And most people saw that as bad in the end, right?
Right.
And then they said, okay, we need to do the Enlightenment, we need reason, and we need all these ways of thinking that break through that chokehold on society, which was the old order.
Right.
And communists, or whatever, the first there was the philosophers in France and blah, blah, blah. So it was like a path. And in the end, the communists took the extreme end of that.
Right.
And they say, we need to destroy everything and start over and create the utopia. That's the only way. I think you need to go take gradual steps along nature's laws, right?
Right.
Versus try to rip it all apart, destroy whatever there was, ruin society in the process, kill a bunch of people, make everyone poor, make everyone oppressed, and then say, now it's better, where every time that's been tried, it turned out to be trash.
And that's my thing. It's like, if this was a new thing, if this was 100% new, right? Like it was back then, I'd say, okay, like at least giving it a try makes sense. Let's see if it works. But it seems like it's been tried many, many, many times across the world over the last, let's say, 100 years, and it doesn't seem to be working anywhere. So what makes this any different?
Well, that right there is my biggest grievance with what's happening in America.
Right.
Because in America, you actually had the best way of living ever in history. And then these people now say, no, this country is evil and wicked by design and all that and racist, and we have to have communism. And you're like, wait a minute, that's been tried for 200 years.
Right.
Leads every time to disaster.
Right.
So you want to replace the best with the worst.
Right.
That's how I see it, being from Eastern Europe, where it was already tried.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And now we even have places like, it was like all of the Cubans were telling the Venezuelans, like, don't do it. Like,
yes.
Just don't do it.
Right.
And now we see what's happening in Venezuela. But again, I really do think people in the United States, no matter what side of the political line people are on, seem to have some sort of echo chamber that they live in, which is just the United States. There is no sense of cultural understanding of anything else that's happened in the rest of the world. Like, I don't know about other people, but in high school, they didn't teach us a lot about world history. World history was like one semester, and we learned about ancient Romans and ancient Greeks and the ancient Persians and all of those things, but we didn't learn near anything about 19th century history, which I would argue is the most important time period of all. Like, that is the most important time period we've ever had as human beings.
Yeah, so it's just a lot to take in, I guess, and you have to know why you should be studying it. Well,
right, that's true.
I think part of the problem here in the USA is, for too long, things were too easy and too nice. And so you'll be like, okay, should I be hitting the books for hours to understand the world and all this history and politics and economics and all these things are hard work mentally, right?
Right.
I can go and walk in the park and ride my skateboard. And funny thing is, I always bring this up. When I moved to America in the early 2000s, jackass was the biggest thing.
Right.
And so it was a jackass culture.
Right. That's true.
It was
true.
all about being a dumbass in the suburbs. You're bored as hell. Your biggest goal is to have fun.
Right.
And you're being really reckless and destructive and throwing it all away when you think about it. And it's because that's where that path leads. You have done it all. You feel like you have it all. You don't know what to do that is any better than what you already have, because really it was the best. And then things start getting worse, but you still think, I'm the best, because it's the default. America's the best.
Right.
You look at now what's happening in American cities, they look like the third world. Is that the best? Now go to Asia, to Singapore, Hong Kong before China destroyed it,
right?
Or Tokyo, Seoul. A lot of these places are now the first world, while Dubai, for example.
Right.
And here we can't even build a road. In Seattle, every single bridge is cracked.
Right.
They can't even get to work anymore. It's a joke, So is this the first world now? And is that the third world now?
It seems like it's headed that direction.
Right.
So speaking of getting to work, what do you do for work in Seattle?
Software, like everybody.
Software? I figured that's a big software city.
Yeah.
You work for one of the big corporations, or you...
I do, but rather not go there.
Right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. And did you go to college in your home country as well, or you came here, you immigrated, and then you went to college here, got a job here, and you've just been here since?
The easiest way to come is with a student visa. So I came for college. So I applied for college after high school, and right after high school I got on a plane and got here.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so I studied here, then I got into the software industry, which was my intent since, I guess, high school.
Right. And are you planning to stay there? Do you have other goals?
No, I'm here now to figure out if it's a good place to move, because I can't stand Seattle.
To Arizona. That's funny. I have a lot that you can look at the statistics of 2020 and where people have moved out of, and I think the 3 or 4 biggest places are Illinois, New York, California, and Washington.
It's bad, yeah. Washington is not the worst. I think it's actually the best of the worst.
It is the best of the worst.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure New York is the worst, California is right behind them, and then Illinois is right behind them.
That sounds right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's how it is, and it's the same driving force driving people out. If you look, you connect the dots, you see exactly what's happening. And this is not a new thing. It's been happening for decades. It's just that now it's reached the breaking point where it's actual total destruction.
Yeah. Well, and people are condoning it is the problem too. People are not just condoning it, but they're encouraging it in many circumstances.
They are. Yeah. People where we live, they think it's the greatest idea ever.
Right.
They think they're building their utopia, right?
Right. This anarchist idea, let's tear it down from the bottom up. Right.
They also think they're guilty because of how they were born and all this really toxic thinking that they've adopted. But it's all a spell that's been cast on them. It's not really their own idea.
Right.
It's brainwash. It's like you have something, you don't deserve it. Others are victims of you.
Right.
And all that is very prevalent in those cities.
So what do you think? Obviously, you guys came to the park to go hang out, so I'm going to let you go. But last question, what do you think is the solution? What do you think people need to start doing in order to kind of like either slow this down or stop it and reverse it?
Well, people need to understand. So I can say it in many ways, but I'll say it in the most diplomatic way, I should say.
Fair enough.
People need to understand number one thing that matters is your self-interest.
Fair.
And if you cannot take care of yourself, of your family, of your city, of your country, it's a progression, right?
Right.
If you cannot do the bare minimum, which is really kind of what's happening, then you cannot help anyone else. And you are not going to be a holy saint by destroying your own, first yourself, then your family, then your city, your community, your country. You're destroying it supposedly because it's holier that way, right? So people need to understand the way you help others is by first helping yourself. You elevate yourself, you reach out and pull up others.
I would agree 100%. I'm starting my master's school after I graduate in May, and I'm planning on becoming a clinical psychologist and getting my doctorate after my master's. And everything you just said there is basically like the fundamental basis of how I think people should be acting in the world with relation to themselves, with relation to the people that they meet. And honestly, I would agree 100%. that is the best way to make sure that the world goes in the right direction, that society continues to develop and move in a direction where people can actually genuinely be happy and strive for better. So thank you. I appreciate you coming by, man. You saw us set up and you were right on top of it.
Sure.
Thank you so much, brother.
I do agree with you. People need to talk.
Thank you. I appreciate that, man. It was great meeting you, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate it too.
Pleasure, bro.